The first film was just fine. I was glad I did it and all. I didn't want to do the second. I didn't want to get into all of that stuff again. But then the third script came, and I liked it very much. They didn't have to talk me into wanting to do that one.
After the second Planet of the Apes was a success, writer Paul Dean received a telegram from main producer Arthur P. Jacobs that stated, "Apes exist. Sequel required. After destroying the Earth, where could one go?" Well, for Dean, the answer was backwards, and he came up with the idea that somehow Zira and Cornelius commandeered Taylor's ship that was sunk underwater, figured it out, and went back in time after launching into space with the help of another chimpanzee. Obviously, we could not go forward in time without moving to another planet, out of the question on a reduced budget, and it was only the lucky recollection of Charlton Heston's abandoned spaceship that suggested a way whereby three intelligent chimpanzees could travel backwards in time to the year 1973. The idea did work, and in truth it was a brilliant attempt to continue the franchise. Dean also contacted original Planet of the Apes author Pierre Boulle to add some satire to the film. Dean noted that writing Escape from the Planet of the Apes was very smooth for him, as he wrote it in about 3 weeks. Usually, it took him about 10 weeks to write scripts in comparison. The film was made to take place in Los Angeles, 1973, and the script was originally called The Secret of the Planet of the Apes, which was dated October 10th, 1970. And we will cover a lot of things in this script as we cover the movie. Fox thought of hiring Gene Kelly or Gordon Douglas to direct Escape from the Planet of the Apes, but that never happened. The studio would eventually pick Don Taylor, who was an actor in about 20 films before he became a director. He started out directing lots of television shows, from Alfred Hitchcock to Night Gallery, before transitioning to theatrical films. Escape would be his 5th theatrical release, and later he would be best known for The Island of Dr. Moreau, Damien, Omen Part 2, and The Final Countdown. Don was attracted to the project because it wasn't just a huge sci-fi epic. It was a more personal film that was basically about a couple who happened to be chimpanzees, and it had humorous elements embedded within a dramatic tale. Dean was really appreciative of Don Taylor's presence. When Dean was writing Beneath the Planet of the Apes, there was a power struggle for the direction of that film, and we covered that in our Beneath the Planet of the Apes video. Suffice it to say, that did not go on during the third ape film, because Mort Abrahams and Charlton Heston were no longer attached to the Apes projects. This was Dean's thoughts of his experiences on the third film. Apes 3 was shot and directed almost exactly as I wrote it, and my relationship with the director Don Taylor, who guided me brilliantly through the second and third drafts, was the best I ever experienced. Don Taylor brought a special experience to the Apes project. Taylor, as I said earlier, had been an actor for a long time, and as such he was very good with collaboration between actors, writers, and the studio. Because of Don's approach, the filming of this movie was extremely smooth, and there was no drama or problems pretty much for the entire production, and what little there was nothing scandalous. And we'll mention some of them, but there's not a lot to report about the behind the scenes of this film. For the makeup, John Chambers did return, but there were only 3 masks for this movie, so they could focus on details. Since the pressure was not on that high, Chambers took a more hands-off approach, and he took a more supervisory role on this film. Art director William Kreber was rehired and remembered having a very smooth time with this film. He designed Ape City in the first Planet, and then he created the underground for the second film. In this one, he stated he just needed to go to Los Angeles, so his job was easy as well. Although Kim Hunter was hesitant to be in sequels, she had no reservation to be in Escape because she really liked the script, as we showed in the earlier interview of this video. However, Dr. Milo, who was played by Roddy McDowall's friend Sal Mineo, was not the same. The character was created to bridge the gap by having an ape finding the craft and managing its retrieval and research off-screen, and then commissioning the ape couple on a whim while the others were in the forbidden zone to test flight the craft. Sal was a star at this time who was nominated for an Oscar twice. He loathed the makeup very much and admitted he took the part for the money. Personally, he was embarrassed that an actor of his caliber was unrecognizable beneath monkey makeup. During the costume process, he had panic attacks as he suffered from claustrophobia. We did have to hug Sal a lot. It was very, very difficult for him being confined in the appliances. He was not comfortable being a chimpanzee. The film was allotted a $2.5 million budget, and filming began on November 30th, 1970, and would wrap in January 19th, 1971. The film had an insanely rushed production, lasting only 6 weeks compared to the 3 months that it took to make Planet of the Apes. However, the professional atmosphere and lack of drama allowed the tight schedule to go very smoothly. It went off like clockwork, no problems at all. Small items like bad weather once in a while, we came in a day under schedule. There was one problem. The whole first day's work was destroyed because we weren't running the camera at the right speed. We had to reshoot the whole first day's work after we shot the rest of the picture. The studio and the production crew were very aware to keep violence and dark tones in mind because during the early 70s, children were the target audience for this franchise, as youth really took to the ape films. The merchandise for Escape was the usual fare. A novel by Jerry Purnell was released along with some more comics. A soundtrack was also available. On a side note to merchandising, I will point out that the movie crossed over to Star Trek in a comic book series called The Primate Directive, which had Captain Kirk's USS Enterprise arriving to the Planet of the Apes world during the period of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Heston's likeness was used for Taylor, and all the main characters returned. The story revolved around the Klingon core, trying to manipulate the world, and Kirk obviously interferes. However, things don't go well, and of course, the Earth is destroyed, while Cornelius, Zira, and Milo are aboard the spaceship around Earth. They simply don't know what to do then. But on their ship is a tricorder that was accidentally left behind by the Enterprise crew, and they use it to figure out how to travel back in time to survive. The comic was published during December 2014 to April 2015. When Escape from Planet of the Apes was released, the big movie everyone was talking about was the breakout hit Billy Jack, which was about a Green Beret Vietnam vet standing up for mistreated Indian locals in a community dominated by brutish whites. Billy Jack was pouncing all competition, and its gritty tone was a common theme in the early 70s films. Just before Apes released, the two newest films was the morbid Johnny Got His Gun, which was about a war veteran who had no limbs, no sight, and couldn't speak. The entire film is narrated by the man trapped in his bed, crying out for help, wishing to die, with flashbacks of his life before he was in this situation.
Instead of him dead, out there in the mud, and me lying here like some freak in a carnival show.
Then there was Vincent Price's abominable Dr. Phibes, who is out to seek revenge and will do so through murder. The week Escape from the Planet of the Apes was released on May 26, 1971, it was a fantastic week for moviegoers. First up was Big Jake, which had everything old-time Western moviegoers wanted. And to counter this movie, the hipper Western that was a non-sequel that seemed like a sequel, Support Your Local Gunfighter, came out, which was just a great film with lots of charm. Escape would have the biggest draw of these three films, though, making $12.3 million. On May 28, 1971, The Beguiled was released, and it was about Clint Eastwood fornicating his way to doom in a sexually oppressed ladies' seminary during the Civil War. The next film was directed by Robert Aldrich, and had Kim Darby kidnapped by the Grissom Gang. This would be followed by The Young Graduates, which had Patricia Weimer possibly pregnant from an affair with a married man and her road trip with her best friend. Escape still did well in theaters by June 9th, 1971, when two new films called The Deadly Trap with Faye Dunaway and They Might Be Giants with Joanne Woodward, trying to help a psychologically troubled man played by George C. Scott who thinks he is Sherlock Holmes in modern day. On June 13th, 1971, Apes was still doing strong when Wuthering Heights was released, as well as Jack Nicholson's directorial debut in Drive, He Said, about a basketball player that is having an affair with another man's wife. In the end, Apes did fine, but not great compared to the other Ape films. It was very appreciated by critics and audiences, but repeat viewings did not occur, and good word of mouth didn't spread for this one. I've tried to analyze why Escape did not do as well as Beneath, and I think there are three reasons. First, there were some who were disappointed in the second picture. Secondly, it's really not so much science fiction as the others were, and I think that was a letdown for some kids, even though it received better reviews and was, I think, a better film. It was an intimate picture, not a spectacle. Third, I think Fox took the attitude it was pre-sold, and therefore not spending too much money in selling it. Now, there was a whole new beginning to this film, and it was actually filmed. It would start with Milo, Cornelius, and Zero riding on horseback to the ship and talking about their plans. Then they would arrive to the craft, and the set was built, as you can see from the pictures provided. These scenes would also be covered in the comics that would later be released for the film. As to why it was cut, I cannot say, but this is what Kim Hunter had to say about it. I think they just cut it. I think we did that, as I recall. I remember shots inside, not a full ship, but inside shots that they took, and I guess they just decided to cut, which probably made sense. Story-wise, it is logical that the scenes were cut, because if we saw the apes go back in time, the entire scene with the military surprised at the sight of the apes being astronauts would be way less impactful. And the 2008 DVD of this film supports this reasoning. Despite the scenes not being utilized, the ship's set would later be used for the Planet of the Apes TV series. So this was the entire beginning before the credits, as they played out originally. We start inside Taylor's ship, and a date meter shows 3955. In the craft are 3 astronauts. The astronauts debate if their actions to escape the planet was wise, and they decide they most likely will die, as they don't know where to go. But then, outside the window, the Earth is enveloped by a giant mushroom cloud. The destruction spreads as the ship violently shakes, and the dead radio finally changes to a voice that sounds like a news channel, covering rioting at Berkeley. The time gauge now reads 1973. The ship is caught in orbit, and soon the craft descends to a new Earth in the Pacific Ocean outside California, where it is spotted by a helicopter, and it reports the craft to the government. We then cut to the military communicating to Washington that nobody knows what this craft is, but will send out a team for retrieval. The main person involved in this discussion is a general named Brody, who talks with the president. It is assumed another country got their hands on an American spacecraft, so they want the military to be at the retrieval and not have the press involved at all. Inside the craft, the 3 occupants talk about being prisoners as helicopters begin commandeering the craft, and one says that they should conceal their intelligence until they learn more about their possible captors. After they let the astronauts out, the apes reveal themselves, and we cut to titles. And you may be surprised that we're going to cut this video short here to make it one of the shortest videos we've ever done to date. We did this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is Don Taylor was so professional, there were no problems making this movie. So there's not a lot to report on behind the scenes. The second reason is we released Escape alongside Alien vs. Predator, and next week when we do part 2, We plan on releasing it alongside The Last Starfighter. So, 2 weeks in a row, we're releasing 2 videos each week. And we needed a short film series to bridge that gap, which are these 2 vids. So we will see you next week, and we will continue to go ape. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Use Super Thanks. It helps a bunch, and so does sharing.